As Charlie said, thank you all so much for coming out this evening, spending your precious Friday evening with us. We think this is a very important series, and we're hoping them on Fridays. First, well, we couldn't find any other day, but would work out. First bit of housekeeping: we don't expect any drama or any fight, but if there is, and we need to get out, we go straight there. We get out onto that bit, right? That's it. Okay, so this is our second in the series, Spaces of Hope. There are many alternatives. It does exactly what it said on the tin. You know, as in the thinking behind it, it's exactly what it said on the tin. We're confronted by many confluence of many crises: environmental, social, economical, and so on and so forth. And all along, we're told, governments try to tell us, stick with us, vote, etc., and we'll have solutions for you. And more often than not, they don't have the solutions. The solutions that they have are beholden to big businesses, corporations, and so on. So what we're doing with Spaces of Hope is trying to say, we're tired of making demands to government. We're tired of making demands to power. What can we do within communities to address all these issues that we face as communities, as individuals, and as a wider society? So that is our aim in Spaces of Hope. I'm part of the Transition Foundation. I'm part of it. It's lots of different organizations, lots of activist movements. We've protested, we've marched, we've done so many other things, and nothing seems to change. So this is where the change happens within our communities, and this is what we're hoping to start these conversations. And we say Spaces of Hope, but hope, of course, on its own is nothing. What we need, as well as hope, or to make anything happen, is courage. And we hope this night gives you some courage, with some examples from around the world and from the UK as well, about how communities are occupying space, not making demands to power or to authority, but occupying space and taking responsibility for their own development. We have 4 excellent speakers for you. And it's divided into 2 sessions. First session is about community spaces, and we'll be hearing first of all from Parisa Wright, from Tina Bromley, and then we'll be hearing from my dear Phoenix veteran activist who works with community and family emergency centers at the moment. Then we have a short break. After that break, we'll look at housing, which is a really contentious and heavy issue, and I know there'll be a lot of things to say about that, so we'll go into that. And for housing, we have my wonderful dear brother Alexander Frigiani from the IIED, who, confession, used to be my lecturer at UCL. So he'll be presenting some examples from around the world. And then finally, to close us off, we have Grace Lally from Housing Rebellion, and Grace is a veteran as well in terms of many campaigns to do with reclaiming space. So, if I can please invite you to welcome Parisa Wright, who will give us our first presentation.
So I've got about 10 minutes, so we're going to start with a 2-minute video.
Which will hopefully be loud enough.
Which will hopefully be loud enough, because I think pictures are really valuable. So this is our community hub. This is a little video we put together for our crowdfunding. You'll all be aware of that sort of, community crowdfunding. Something we're doing at Remade, but I just want to share.
Is this one, is it? Was it the other one?
No,
that one.
That one,
yes.
If you can make it full screen, that would be amazing.
That's what we're doing.
Oh, amazing. Okay. 2 minutes, and then I've got 8 minutes worth of other stuff.
I really love coming to the hub.
I just live on this. Yeah. It makes my week.
In 2022, we got to set up an amazing community hub in a vacant unit of Middle Age Shopping Centre in Bromley. Now, 2 years later, we have at least 1,000 people every month coming into this space, using it 5 days a week. And from the day it opened, it has been a haven for people who want to know more about what they can do to live more sustainably, but also people who want to reduce their cost of living, for people who are battling loneliness, for people who have health vulnerabilities.
Coming here, people who accept Jinx it.
In terms of well-being, it's probably one thing that saves me from absolute despair.
We now need your help to make sure that this amazing space can continue going and growing.
Since being involved in the community, I've changed the way that I travel. I've looked at where my pension is invested, and I've also reduced my waste time.
I came into the hub for an energy efficiency clinic. I picked up a few tips. Now I'm saving a bit of cash at home.
These things are helping people save money, improve their mental health, reduce loneliness, build community resilience, and really reduce our carbon emissions locally.
There's something for everyone really, there's such a range of things.
School trip has been brilliant today. They learned about wildlife and upcycling and recycling.
I really enjoy actually getting people to realise what you can use with scrap materials.
Now, we want to make sure that even more people can come and benefit from this space and the skills and the equipment and the advice here. We want to make sure that more people can benefit across the UK by creating a blueprint here that other communities can use to set up their own.
To help us reach and support more people, please donate to our crowd.
Brilliant, amazing. So I hope that's it's nice to see the actual space, right, and the people using it, and the range of things that are going on there, and the range of needs that are being met. So what's my first point? My first point is we're in a polycrisis at the moment. So we have a massive cost of living crisis, we have a mental health crisis, we have a loneliness crisis, and of course, why did I leave my job? We've got a climate crisis and a biodiversity crisis. But all of these things are connected to each other, and we all know that people who are dealing with cost of living and have health vulnerabilities, people from non-white communities, people who are marginalised in different ways, whether they're refugees or asylum seekers or homeless people, all those people are disproportionately impacted by climate and would disproportionately benefit from community spaces. And what are we losing? We're losing our community spaces, we're losing our youth centres, we're losing human beings in the supermarket for elderly people to even talk to. And so these community spaces are so important. And one of the things that we've had to deal with is the myths and the stigma that are obstructing people from coming together and taking action on projects or just doing what we do here, which is, yes, bringing people together for community projects, but really just sharing skills in the community. Someone knows how to sew, someone knows how to pickle, someone knows how to insulate their home. They're coming, they're the trusted messengers, and they're showing their community. It's not good enough to raise awareness. You have to give people the skills. You can't expect them to pay £60 for a sewing class or some other amount of money to learn to grow food or whatever it is. You have to give them those skills for free, and then you have to give them access to the equipment, which is another thing we do. For example, we have, amongst other things, sewing machines in there. And every day, 5 days a week, people will come in from the community and use those sewing machines to repair things and to make things. We have 13-year-old boys who I've seen come in with big black puffer jackets, sit down in front of the sewing machine and fix ribs in their coats. And then this guy did it a couple of weeks ago. It's like, where did you learn to sew? And he's like, here, it was free. He came for 2 workshops free at the hub, and he's fixing his own clothes. He's fixing his mum's clothes as well, apparently. And apparently, according to our hub manager yesterday, he's been bringing a load of his friends who are guys into the shop as well. Because when we chose this unit, we chose a unit which was prominent in a popular shopping centre to make it aspirational, to stop these people that we're trying to reach feeling that these activities are fringe or that they should be isolated at the back of the shopping centre or at the back of the church or the back of the civic centre, the shitty end of the high street where no one wants to go. You don't want to normalise something. You can't normalise something in that way. And also, people are already siloed enough. We should be bringing them together in the heart of the community. So that's the siloing point. The other siloing point is, when I set up the community group 5 years ago, and we set this up 2.5 years ago, I just thought it was crazy how, and I'm sure there are reasons for this, people have to focus on specific areas, but the conversation around sustainability is so siloed. It's just air, and funding as well, it's just air pollution, or it's just energy, or it's just veganism, or it's just transport. And actually it's all interconnected. And really, if you can bring someone into a space, and we offer 360 sustainability, so you can come in on any issue that worries you or you're interested in. You might be fascinated in nature, or you might be worried about air pollution. You might be trying to also deal with the co-benefits around cost of living or health. So you might come in to reduce your energy bills. But you can come in for any reason. And a lot of people will come in because they're lonely. A lot of people will come in because they like the idea of doing arts and crafts with their kids for free in a cost of living crisis. But when you're 360, you can bring them on that journey through those gateway areas of interest or those gateway needs. You can bring them on a journey to think about how they can collaborate with their community and what other areas of sustainability or collaboration they can get involved in. We've had people who are regulars for sewing, knitting and crochet work, socials. So they've already done the workshops and they're socialising now. But those same people, some of them have given up their cars, some of them have given up meat, some of them have changed the way they heat their homes, some of them are now going out and setting up their own Instagram accounts and clubs and groups to do their own thing in their own communities closer to home. So trusted messengers is something I wanted to say. It's the local people, the trusted messengers, not government officials, not businesses. That's what people want to hear from. And when we've got all of this, I'm sorry, but bullshit basically happening at a national level, where people are pretending for votes that climate and sustainability is not relevant to regular people. They're pretending that the poorest can afford to have a car, or the poorest are not the people who are living in the flats that now do not have to be warm until whenever it is. Those are not wealthy people. And yet we have put off dealing with that. We've put off dealing with lots of things because we're worried about impacting regular people. So the idea is trusted messengers are the local people, deal with all the issues. And then the final thing is, so my background is I was a lawyer for 20 years. I started off in human rights, did some cases at Stratford, then had to pay my mortgage. So went into and ended up at ITV, making TV shows for 11 years. And it was 2018, the school climate strikes when I was at home with my baby, and I thought, shit, I've got to do something more with my skills. I've got to do something more with my network and with my brain than making TV shows that, I'm sorry, they won't make any difference. And so I set up a community group, and it grew to a charity, and it's grown to this. But the point is that I believe that there are blockers holding back lots. I've got a basically problem-solving mentality, right? I come from a sort of more of a corporate background, you could say. But the idea is there's not joined-up thinking, and there's lots of different charities doing lots of different projects, and there's lots of different hubs and climate emergency centres and transition towns and repair cafes and community allotment gardens. And it's brilliant because we need lots of different versions and lots of different models because different communities and settings need different things. But they're all struggling with the same three blockers. Those three blockers are chiefly the balance between volunteers and staffing, the lack of diversity of the people coming into those projects and interacting with them, whether you're a transition town, whether you're a CEC, whether you're a community energy company, you're struggling reaching the people that you want to reach, and they are the most climate vulnerable. You're struggling reaching the people who do not look like you, generally. And so that is a really big issue in your visitors and in your volunteers. And then the final issue is diversification of funding streams. Because if you don't have funding, how are you supposed to have staff? If you don't have staff, how can you do community outreach? How can you be reliable 5 days a week? How can you put on interesting things? And what we do is we work with different charities and community groups representing marginalised communities. We work with food banks and design our offering with them. And whenever we have a paid job, we always put it out to them first and then the rest of the community, so that they have the opportunity. And we've even just recently got funding to redesign some of our volunteering opportunities to make them more friendly for people who have English as a second language or who are struggling sort of with literacy. So all those three issues I talked about are things that we're trying to test solutions for here. Because with my background, it doesn't make sense for us to be doing this just for Bromley and Lewisham boroughs. What makes sense is the reason I gave up my career 2.5 years ago was to basically make sure we can create a blueprint which people can take, and either they can do it exactly the same, and it will have all the practical stuff like how to negotiate the lease, and more importantly, what do you do in the hub, how do you man the hub, there's events you put on, but also the behavioural science side of like, how do you not use the words climate and sustainability sometimes? You focus on the fact that sewing, or even insulating our home, is something from, all our heritage, whether it's Iranian, whether it's African, whether it's Indian, whether it's English. Repairing and reducing waste is part of all our heritage. So how do we talk about it as life skills and heritage skills? And so that behavioural science part and those different gateways we talked about are part of that blueprint as well. And then finally, looking at those 3 blockers and making sure that's in the blueprint. So it's really holistic, so it's really joined up. So that either people can do it sort of franchise style, but obviously free, we're not going to charge them to use the model, or they can take that blueprint and say, right, I know people who've had climate emergency centres and who've burnt out and had to close down. I know people who are battling with transition towns, and we're all battling in all our models with all these issues. But actually, if you can take that blueprint, I don't need you to set up this exact thing. You can take that blueprint for your transition town and use the bits that are useful for you, you can cherry pick. Because the most important thing I found coming into this really blind 5 years ago is we should be sharing learnings, we should be collaborating more, we should not be making the same mistakes too many times because we have so little energy and so little money that we need to make that energy and that money really count. So that's what we're trying to do. So we're trying to create a blueprint that everyone can use, that can be shared. So we've been sharing already as we go along our learnings with people like the Transition Town Network, with people like Ashton, with people like the GLA. This week I was at the Urban Design Group trying to beg developers to actually think about community hubs and how they need to address all the poly crisis, not just the sort of immediate thing that comes to their head, and that they need to consult and work with communities rather than just assuming what they want. So that's kind of me really, and that's kind of what we're trying to do. And I encourage everyone, I didn't know anything. I knew that 20 years ago I wanted to work in human rights. I ended up having to try and pay my bills. But this is, for me, is a full circle to human rights 5 years ago when I started doing this work. Because this is the biggest human rights issue of our time. And if we keep thinking, oh no, I can't support that because I'm working with a disability charity. Oh no, I can't support that because I'm working with a food bank. It's all interconnected. So we should all be working together because all those charities represent people who are much more impacted by climate than the white middle class person that's become the stereotype, that's become the go-to for the movement. And also, we should be highlighting more all the amazing projects that are being done by the people who are not the stereotype. And we don't do that now. So anyway, sorry, that's my little bit, and I hope that was useful. And I think after Phoenix has talked, we're going to answer questions. Is that how we're going to do it, Nick?
Absolutely,
yes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Paris. I really appreciate it. Time short, Phoenix, please. Yeah.
Hello, welcome, thank you everyone for coming and tuning in here. We need more spaces for hope, we need more spaces for action, we need more community spaces. My name's Phoenix, I help run a charity called Space Generators, but before that, for many, many years, since the 1992 Rio Earth Summit, basically our collective or group has been getting buildings and setting up rainbow centres and community centres, environmental community centres mainly. We did ask back in the early 90s to try and get buildings. I think Islington Council was going to give one for free to a community group. This community group said they wanted to work with us. We did a whole business plan, went through all the paperwork thing, and then after about 9 months of waiting, Islington Council said, no, you can't have the building for free, we're going to have to search for £1 million. So us and our friends got on with occupying buildings for the next 25 years. We continue to ask for buildings, but we found councils are extremely good people within councils, good people within every organisation, who try and change things. But it's very, very difficult to get hold of spaces and buildings. So we kept asking, but we kept occupying, we kept negotiating, we managed to get quite a few deals over the years on empty buildings by being friendly, cooperating, talking to the owners, and set up some very big centres that many different groups and movements and people came through, from the early road protest movements into early reclaiming the streets, which big parties on the High Street and Tottenham and various other places over the years. Many different movements have come through our spaces over the years, to paint banners, to have meetings, to organise, to paint things, to do things. Every community needs space. And what is the one thing we can all see in our communities? All around us, we can all see empty buildings. We recycle bottles, cans, plastic. Why are we recycling empty buildings? It's one of the biggest resources we have. Quite a few years ago, figures from one of the official groups was saying that basically there is about 1.5 million empty buildings in the UK. I think with the Empty Homes Agency, 800,000 residential buildings, 600,000 commercial buildings. And what an absolute waste to have these spaces sat around and nothing doing within them. So after 25 odd years of doing this, 7 years ago we set up a charity, and one of the things we did during lockdown was sit down and write down 30 years of knowledge into this climate emergency centre handbook, how to set up a climate emergency centre or a CEC in 10 steps. And much as Marissa was just saying, how to make it easier for other groups to pass on the knowledge. So we put that out around a lot of different networks, our network of 35 years of community and activism and many more recent movements and things, and Transition Town and other groups. And suddenly we found that after lockdown, the first one we did in Ilford in a big old home base, which was very hard to get going, open and close, and lockdown, open and close, but then we got it going and lots of people came from a big diversity community and came and used the space. And then they started popping up all over the place, Staines. We actually managed to get the east side and the west side of Staines massive together. They've got this one here is an old betting shop there, and they got given it by the council, and then they turned it to the Talking Tree, which has now been running about 3 years and doing tons of stuff, and local community allotments and open mics and music, and did thousands of meals during lockdown. Then other ones started opening up. I think Lewis was one of the next ones. The mayor came and opened up a building there. And through this handbook they started popping up. Swindon got themselves a River Island, down in Seaford they got a Nat West, and Plymouth got 3-storey Waterstones. Absolutely incredible. One of my favourite stories, which is all about the narrative and the stories. Swindon, when I went back for their 2-year birthday, they estimated they've had 200,000 people through that River Island building in the last 2 years, and they've got massive diversity. A whole load of old people's groups come and use it, youth groups coming in after school, they've got refugee groups, they've got about 150 home education school kids come upstairs, they've got different art exhibitions, they've got women's arts exhibitions, all sorts of stuff. And that's just one building. So the network gradually grew and we help each other by sharing documents. Just saying, we set up on some very old non-hierarchical principles of autonomous organising. Every single one of these centres is autonomous. It's up to them in wherever they are around the country, from Preston to Totnes to Islington to Kingston to Norfolk to wherever it is, to Carmarthen in Wales, got themselves an old pound. It's up to them. They're autonomous how they run themselves. But we all try and help each other. We meet up, we have webinars, we have meetings, we try and share documents. Some groups are more active than others on how much they share and help and whatever it is. But it grew from the first 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, other ones starting to pop up around the country. It's about 28 now. A new one just opened in Durham the other day. One opening in Rugby pretty soon. And it's really, really, really important that we get these spaces open. It's an absolute waste of our resources. And what we need to do is help and support each other to get these spaces open. So there is tips and ways that we can help each other on setting up legal entities, or some of the groups have worked with the local transition towns to use their legal entity. In the middle of the handbook there was a secret I'm going to tell you, which I don't think we're charging for, but we're going to give it away for free. Basically, any not-for-profit or charity, you can save up to 100% on business rates if you fill out the form for a council and you're genuinely doing 5 sorts of things in the environment, in the community, whatever that is, talks, workshops, meetings, waste repair. A lot of the groups do repair cafes, community fridges, community food things. We need space. And what we're trying to do is prove the case that this is good for the environment, it's good for the community, it's good for the economy, it's good for mental health, it's good for loneliness. People need space to gather. And the old phrase, you can't paint a 30-foot banner in your mum's front room. We need space to make things happen and to do things. And there is, I'm not business, I'm not economy, but we've got to try and put some words in like that to help the council and the buildings, and the owners give us buildings. But if you had a 20-room building and people would come in and have a community hall and an art gallery and a cafe and a workshop, somebody to repair bikes, somebody sat there in their mum or their dad's front room and really wants to set up an eco-enterprise, a community enterprise, do something, have a dance, have a music event, whatever it is, but they can't find the space. And this is a recipe where you can get everyone cooperating. It's not just about one building, it's about the intelligent reuse of the vacant property infrastructure in every town and city. So it's not just about getting one community centre on High Street in the River Island and out west, the old cinema, whatever it is. We want to link these buildings up to kind of, like you should have a community centre, maybe there's another shop building where you sell crafts and art, things that people have done, and maybe there's a warehouse building that's given to build the circular economy and recycle and reuse things. And absolute magic happens when you get these spaces, you know. Just to say, there's 28 odd centres now. The green ones on the map are physical centres, and the red ones are teams that want to get a building or they're just starting to set up. And we try and help them to go through the process of setting up a legal entity, talk to the council, talk to the property owners. But what we say is it's a win-win-win situation. It's a win for the council, because 300 councils declared climate emergency, because some of us and our friends and these naughty people blocked up the streets of central London for about 11 days and trying to square things. And suddenly 300 councils over the next while declared climate emergency, but they don't have the funds, the resources, and again, there's good people within councils trying. We need to get everyone across the whole spectrum of our society cooperating. So there's like 300 councils declared climate emergency. This is a way that they can be seen to be doing something, have a space to cooperate, and that's a win for the council. It's a win for the owner of the building, because they save up to 100% of these business rates. For some of you don't know, some of these buildings, they're paying 20, 50, 100. The old home base in Ilford, £250,000 a year while it's empty, you have to pay. So your group's a big solution for this property owner when you come to them and sell. And it's a total win for the community, because you get a space to meet, talk, connect, workshops, cabarets, cinema, bike repair, community fridge, vegan cafe night, whatever, you know, what would you like to see in the community space? You know, the aim is always they're community-led. It's up for, you know, a group of people to get together and set up and organise, and then ask the community what they want and bring them in and get involved and you know, what they want to see in the space. One of the aims is that we have kind of people's assemblies or community assemblies where people can input their ideas. You know, on the first day of Occupy London, on the St Paul's steps, as the BBC report saying to the camera that today over 900 cities are occupied and having people's assemblies. You know, if we can get community assemblies, people's assemblies going in all of these different spaces to create analogies in spectrum of society, and we need to get everyone together very quickly and cooperate. And the last thing is, one of the things they do when we do the Zoom at the beginning to explain it to any new group who wants help to get building, brings together an alliance of 10, 15, 20, 25 different groups that build an alliance that work together on that building, and then hopefully get some other buildings. So if you want to find out more, check out climateemergencycentres.co.uk, or give us a ring, or get in touch, or there's a flyer back on the wine over back there. Thank you very much for listening. Keep that working. Let's reclaim space.
And the things that I'm picking up from both of you is the absolute need to collaborate and to kind of organise collaboration. So, yeah, I think Felix, I'll start with you. How do we organise collaboration in a way that, you know, we are all speaking to each other, we are kind of, you know, we are working in adjacency with each other's skills and design. Yeah, that's something we know about. National network.
collaboration. I'm very in favour of cooperation. Circles, I suppose, would be my first answer. Because in a circle, everyone's equal, everyone faces each other. We had a community centre years ago, circle community centre. Having meetings that you invite a wide range of groups of people to come together in a circle. And one of the things in the handbook, there's a list of 50 different groups that could be in any city or town you can reach out to. So whatever that is, men's groups, women's groups, people of colour, faith groups, vegan groups, farmers groups, whatever it is, get as many different groups as possible in the room, and LGBT groups, and many different groups cooperating. How can we create that cooperation? Because this is not something any one group can solve together. We have to listen to each other, share time, share resources, share spaces.
Great. Absolutely. Nick, if you
Oh no, just then you could speak up a bit.
struggling with
I'm speaking up actually speakers.
yeah, don't speak to me. Yeah, so circles. Did I not say circles? I did. So circles are actually just bringing all those people together, but we need to know who each other are, and I think maybe here in Lambeth we're not quite so clear about the plethora of groups that there are. And I was interested, Chris, in what you were saying, that hey, there are loads of groups of people of colour doing amazing things, possibly not represented tonight, but there's lots of that activity happening in Lambeth. So, you know, maybe one of the things we're talking about is some level of directory. You also mentioned digital. So, yeah, can you just tell us a little bit more about your experience in kind of bringing people into your amazing space in Bromley?
I think one of the things that we did before we were going to set up the hub was we set up something called the Bromley Environment Network. So we work with the Lewisham Climate Action Group, and they have a network. And we kind of built on what they were doing and set up something in Bromley so that and it was, I'm not being funny, but we made it as vanilla as possible. So we said the mission for the Bromley Environment Network was to make Bromley a greener, healthier, more sustainable place to live now and in the future. There's no word of activism, there's no word of climate, there's no word of carbon in there. But it just meant that lots of different community groups, faith groups, PTAs, residents associations, charities felt like they were able to sign up to that kind of mission statement. And then we used that as a way to communicate with people when there were things like public consultation. So we got the highest turnout of any London borough for the air quality consultation. We got 4 times the London average because we set up that network and we went out to each of them and we said, this is the reason your beneficiaries would be interested in this thing when we shared it. So we kind of, when we were talking to people, we tried to think about proactively how their beneficiaries would benefit.
Yeah.
And that's how we got them engaged in the network, and then we got them celebrating with each other what little steps they were taking, what big steps they were taking. And it gave an opportunity to some of the under-recognised sort of action groups and environmental groups to get their message out there to people who never reached normally. But also gave an opportunity to people who are running disability charities or food banks to get their message out as well. So it sort of started with a background like that. So when we set up the hub, then we started doing community co-design days in the hub, where we would invite community leaders and beneficiaries from different marginalised communities and charities and community groups to come together and share, usually around themes like energy, nature, health, cost of living, what sorts of things they would like to see in the hub in terms of events, in terms of services, in terms of equipment, and what sorts of things they would like to do in their own group and have support from. So their beneficiaries wouldn't have to come into the hub. They could be doing those activities there. So we've done things where we've co-designed workshops, which then those charities are just delivering to their beneficiaries in-house. So they're not reliant on that space. I don't know how to say it, but it's kind of like trying to not be like colonialistic about it and say, you must come here and you must do these things here, because actually, if you can share those learnings and empower people to do it in their own space, the way they want to do it, whether it's in the old people's home or the food bank cafe or whatever it is. Anyway, so that's, sorry, I just talked for Britain, but that's kind of the way that we've tried to get people to engage.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think the bringing the word colonial into it, or decolonial, as I think we need to
Yeah,
think
exactly.
is kind of super important. And law, if the labelling of it is also something that sits in that kind of slightly colonial box.
I think, can I just say, I just find it really patronising when people are like, this group doesn't get sustainability and climate. It's like, well, actually that group, as part of their culture, whether it's Iranian or wherever they're from, like, you know, I grew up with my grandmother pickling things. I grew up with my, you know, most of us grew up with our grandparents pickling things, turning the heating down, you know, repairing things, you know, trying not to spend money on things. So the idea that sustainability is some sort of, it feels like a new buzzword, and that people are being told, oh, you're not into it or you're not engaging with it, but actually it's actually part of their history. And some of them are very much already doing this, just that they don't see it, they don't connect with those words, and they don't connect with, they don't yet sometimes, even though they're doing those things, they don't yet connect with climate and actually how climate is impacting them or how high carbon lifestyles are impacting them. So, but the words are problematic, I think.
So I suppose that's one of the reasons why we, you know, we couldn't create a brand. We didn't want to do that. We're non-hierarchical organisations for decades and years. So we said each centre calls itself what they want. They are autonomous. They can decide how they run themselves in Brighton or Birmingham or Colchester or Cardiff. And you know, there's a whole diversity of names. Some themselves have called themselves climate hubs or climate emergency centres, climate response centres. There's also Swindon Community Hub or Kingston Hive or the Friends of the Earth one. I mean, so it's up to each group to see how they want to run themselves. I think the old phrase in Hamburg is a pensioners group in Plymouth might want to set up in a different way or in a different legal entity or way of decision making than the mums group in Manchester. So we have to allow groups to have that autonomy of how they want to set up, how they want to organise. But if we can share as much of this knowledge in a free way as possible, then it can help groups not to make the same mistakes, to learn from others, to accelerate getting the buildings and learning from this movement for the last 34 years that we're all in part. We stand on the shoulders of giants, being the common moving onwards to movements now.
And that was about one final question, that was in mind. But the final point I'm going to make is you're sharing the knowledge. Where does it sit? Where's the filing cabinet that we can all access with it all in?
Emergencycentre.co.
It's all there. It's all there. And is it organised like a, you know, how accessible is it? If I went in and said, I want to start a group, FAQ, would you tell me how to do that?
Yes, you can download the handbook. There's other things.
Amazing.
Hands up, we need loads more help. We need loads more organising. So come and chat afterwards or get a leaflet. We always need to get organised and share in a better way.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you both. That was really enlightening and illuminating and encouraging, I think. Well, I hope so. What do you all think? We don't have a microphone, so you're going to have to stick your hand up.
Could I just quickly ask how many people here are from Lambeth? And well, actually, do we need to organise at a borough level? Because we've got Transition Town Brixton, which is making this space available tonight. You know, we're trying to make spaces for connecting and collaborating. But we've started so many projects, and there's loads of projects and things, and we're quite well connected, but we're not networked formally, or we're not organised at a borough level. Is that something we need to do? And can I just see how many people are here from Lambeth actually? Should we get organised?
Yes. So we should get organised.
Okay, so we'll have another meeting after.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm quite in favour of the meeting light and the action heavy, because we have been, you know, chit-chatting for a really long time. So, you know, maybe just put your name on the list if you want to join something. Any other questions out there? Yes.
Sorry, I've forgotten your name. Phoenix. So it's a little bit more directed at you because I'm on an estate that has 3 community spaces, and Lambeth Council have denied all of them from deny them to the residents. So I guess this is also to people who are Lambeth-based here or whatever. What solution do you offer? Like they give you the odd breadcrumb now and then, like Easter egg hunt or AGM. But we're not, because obviously they don't want it. But anyway, I'm just kind of putting it out there that even though there are spaces you can access, the access is another obstacle. It's quite a barrier.
Let me give you a positive example there. I'm with you who hear what you're saying. There's so many community spaces that should be used, aren't used, that are closed due to austerity or various other things. Direct action gets results. You've got to try the legal route, you've got to try negotiate and talk in, being reasonable, but you also need to occupy, take action, pressure from our friends. And I think Sarah Bear was telling me at the last Shindig Festival that on the Rockingham estate, I'm not sure which borough that's in, but there was a very not used community centre, so they managed to get the keys going and start running it, and the council was suddenly really, really pleased. And so this is fantastic, you're running the community centre on the Rockingham estate, we love you, this is fantastic, it's great. Then when they found out that she'd actually been involved with squatting lots of community centres and things in the previous 20 years, they were like, oh, we don't like that. It's like, but I'm exactly the same person doing exactly the same thing that we were before, but it's just, that's our history. And, we need to take action, we need to put pressure on, and, there's an Elmess estate at the moment being occupied by the housing rebellion thing. You need to go from both ends and try asking and being nice and doing the paperwork and all that. You need to just get in and find a weak spot.
And they said why?
Because we're facing demolition and I protest a lot off my estate, so they don't want us to have the community space. But I'm just putting it out there because this is a Lambeth meeting. It's in Lambeth. Some people here already know me, and it's just to let you know that sometimes it's like we don't have a space, but sometimes we do have a space. What we don't have is a cooperative Lambeth Council.
But maybe is there a different space?
And is there a different person you can talk to?
Or a different person you can ask.
I just think, I suppose maybe it's a call that we probably need to demonstrate. Using the groups here, probably we'll have to organise something, start putting more pressure on.
You've got to try, again, like I said, try and talk to someone different in the council from a few different angles. Also, you're known as a protest person in that. Try and get someone else a little bit smarter, nicer to go in from another angle who's your mate. Same kind of group, but different person.
I basically if you want them to give you something, you're going to have to give them something. It's just the way it kind of is, and that's not in a,
Sometimes it's like what we said about highlighting, sorry. Sometimes it's like what we said about highlighting the economic benefits and the mental health benefits and all the benefits, because basically councils and government should be paying for youth centres and community centres, but they're not. And then, they just let all these people, adults with learning difficulties and old people and parents of other 3-year-olds who can't put their kids anywhere, and everyone else just sort of hang around in random community areas. And you are doing them a service because you're saving them money in terms of looking after these people. If you're giving access to I just mean diverse groups, then you're doing them a favour. So if there's any way of having a look at their sort of like what they're putting on their website about what they do in the borough or in their area around mental health and around cost of living and around these different areas that you will be hinting as a community centre, and then going to them with kind of a business plan saying, if we have access, these are the groups that we're going to be servicing, this is roughly how many people we could be coming through. As a result of that, we take the pressure off the NHS and off this and off that. If you can kind of put it in a business case way and then maybe go with somebody else, like Phoenix said, if they know you, they know me as a troublemaker in my area now. So sometimes, and I'm not being funny, the sad state of affairs is where I am, it's extremely bloody conservative. I have to send, generally, a white, middle-aged man to a meeting, sometimes if it's with a counsellor. That's the sad reality, but sometimes you just have to bite the bullet, deal with reality and just get your way that way.
But obviously you've got to look at, there's a few other factors there. If they want to close that estate or run it down, did you say?
Oh, yeah.
They don't want you in that community centre. Stop, really. They don't want you going up driving community space because...
There'll be more protests.
The little factor, I think the number of estates in London that are closing down was more housing that they're trying to close down and sell off currently under Boris Johnson is done. more housing, council estates have been closed down, decanted, like the 15 months case, the Guinness estate occupation, the various other ones, Sweets Way, estate occupation, more were being closed down and sold off than in housing that was destroyed during World War II. Another quick one, so many of our buildings are given to property guardians. We had a meeting with Joe Edgy for the leader, Harringay Council, we liked what we did, said give these guys a building, and the other council said there's 9 buildings with property guardians, and Harringay Council is paying them to look after the buildings, while the people in them pay to be security guards. We should be getting these buildings back for community.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just really interested because you've both been really clear about the benefits of this stuff happening, and I know that one of the difficulties for whether you're activists or a small community organisation, when you're going to ask for help or going to ask for money, you have to sort of justify it and stuff. And it sounds like you've got loads of amazing data. Is that something that's already collected that could be so that people can, when they're struggling with filling out application forms or know what to say to a council, is that being collected in a format that people can go, well, if we do this, we will be able to, these are the health benefits, these are the proof points. Does that exist in your team?
Just to say quickly, when we were about to do the first climate notice in Ilford, in Redbridge, very bright borough, big ethnic diversity, we were going to have Sheffield University Professor of Urban Planning working with UCL and Brighton students to do a whole survey, how many people came in, how many workshops, how many jobs, what diversity of people, get all that data in and improve the case for these people should be used. Unfortunately, lockdown happened, they didn't come, and then we just all these buildings started popping up. Quite a few of the buildings have done social impact reports. I know there's one just come out very recently, Worthing, and a few others, and showing all the good that they are doing. But as a network, we haven't gathered that data, and we want to. We're not university people, some of us, and we wish more people would help to gather that data, because it's come out from funders. If you have more data, we're giving more money, but we're actually, we want evidence that you're doing it. It's like 28 bloody cents. But you've got to write them all out, the right words, the right keywords, the right big words.
I agree, and I think the thing we struggle with, and we are getting better at, is collecting that data. So even knowing that there's 1,000 people every month coming through is useful. Knowing we now do a lot of our events, we try and do Eventbrite as well as walk-in, so at least we've got some data for the people who are signing up on Eventbrite. But also we collaborated with Imperial in the first year that we set up, and then at the moment we've got some tiny bit of funding to do a research project with Bath University in Cast, which is about where are the people who are coming into the hub coming from, what is their background, why are they originally coming in, is it loneliness, is it sustainability, is it energy, whatever, and then what are they getting out of it, and then where do they want us to prioritise, so that we can also be evolving what we're offering, so that as we create a blueprint, it's really being honed down with actual proper data. Because data is really difficult when you're just a sort of community group and you don't have much money, or even a small charity like ours, you don't have much money. And the staff that you do have are just so stretched, and they're always doing extra co-vario hours, even the paid staff, then you've got loads of volunteers. It's really hard to ask them to collect that data. But it is so important, especially given the climate crisis means we need to do everything fast, and we need to do everything effectively on a tiny budget. So actually, it's something that I'm working really hard to try and change the culture within our volunteers and our staff, for them to understand it's not a nice to have. If we really want to have impact with this space, we need to understand what's not working, what we're wasting our time on, but also what people want, and then what their blockers are. If they've been to solar panel or energy efficiency workshops and they haven't done stuff, what has stopped them, and how can we work with other community groups, charities, councils to make that? So it's kind of, we do need that more strategy, and the strategy, so funders don't want to give you money without data, and it's really hard to get data, as you know, like when we're all struggling financially to try and even have any paid people. But then also, like, in order to deliver something that is really decent quality, you do need to have that data, because otherwise you don't know if you're actually making a difference. We've got case studies, like, lovely case studies of amazing people who've come in and gone, I did crochet, now I've left my car behind, kind of thing. But, that data of all those people is really useful.
That is absolutely, sorry, just to come back on that, it's absolutely amazing. Like, Felix, you said it's all about story, and that kind of thing, I came for that, but ended up doing something else. That's the kind of narrative building.
That's what keeps me going, basically.
I was going to mention it because I've been in Peckham all day, in the storytelling lab that University of the Arts London are doing, and they were saying that one of the things that really stymies the narrative sector is that nobody has the proof points. It says when you tell decent stories, amazing things happen.
Yeah.
And they've been doing a year's project collecting that data, which they can then kind of hand out to that world.
But then also, Charlie, when story meets data.
Yeah, exactly. So I suppose
really,
just making that point that like, there's the people that are kind of creating narratives and writing things and doing creative work, and then there's the people who are actually doing stuff in community on the ground, and that kind of storytelling world is like nagging for real world experience. So again, linking up wider would be really helpful.
I think that's really useful. What do you know to push? We've got a survey of 10 questions. We want to send out to the network. Push that again. On an exhibition, we do a 40 years of protest, social change movements. We gather comments, and we should gather comments as well. One of my favourite comments is from the Swindon to the event. They introduced this 82-year-old lady, Vanessa, who's basically like the oldest volunteer there. And one line comment from her, she said, "When I moved to Swindon, I didn't know anybody. Now I'm a volunteer at the Swindon Community Hub. I know everybody." Massive smile on her face. So that to me was a lot of gold. Doesn't go more than anything. That money thing. That's what we do it for. See a room full of people who come together from empty space.
So there's a question for Felix, because as part of XR Lab, we tried really hard to get the community centre, CEC in Brixton, and we researched and we attended loads of your workshops, and it was brilliant. And I think one of the hindrances was essentially it fell down to two people, myself and Lisa, who had full-time jobs, and we were like, we've run out of capacity. So it's like, is there a way of, I don't know, this is an open question to anyone in the room actually, it's like how you locate people who find common interest, but might have more capacity than the people who originally kind of latch on to the idea and then realise, oh God, I've got too many family commitments or too much professional life commitments, or I'm just struggling to pay my bills. Because that's the real thing that I believe that does stop people from taking action. Well, I'm careful not to use the word activist here. To take action is that they're just struggling day to day to meet their daily needs. So it's kind of opening that kind of forum to say, right, who can take that step, because it's not coming from local government or council, that help. So we have to do it ourselves, and that's what's amazing about everyone in this room. But I wonder if there are any tools and tricks that collectively we've got our minds together about how we can source each other's time or commitment or
Great question. Who wants to take I could do a little maybe on that and then we'll go back up. I think we've got two slightly different models. I think our model, and the reason we spoke at the Transition Town Conference the first year we set up was because one of the reasons they struggle with all those blockers we talked about is because they didn't have any kind of staff. And it's really hard. When we first set up our community hub, we thought we'd be able to run it with just volunteers. We had 90 people who said that they were definitely going to do a 3-hour shift every week. But then when it came to it, people were busy, people were ill, people had this, people had jobs, and it was really difficult. And ultimately, we would not have been able to stay in a shopping centre unit. And I mean, I mentioned one of the people at CEC, the climate hubs in CEC that I talked to, and she had been in a shopping centre unit too. And it had been this situation where there was a couple of people driving, there's always 1 or 2 people driving it, right? And they burnt out because they had no funding for any staff, and they couldn't get reliable other people to open and close it, and they got chucked out, they got burnt out, and they got chucked out because if you're in a shopping centre especially, which they were as well, you have to be open at 10, close at 6 or whatever, right? 5 days a week or 2 days a week, whatever she was doing. But they didn't have any funding, and ultimately what you need in that situation, in our situations, you needed a hub manager. You needed somebody 5 days a week. We have actually 2 people that split it between them. One has got experience with the practicalities of running the space, like doing the insurance, the sprinklers, and blah, 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 but is also very informed. And the other one is craft focused, event focused, but between them they split the work. But without that, the hub wouldn't be open because we have volunteers, and every day volunteers come and they do shifts, and people come and say, I want to run a puncture repair workshop on Friday, that's brilliant. I want to do a sewing workshop every Monday, that's brilliant. But ultimately, they can let you down. But if you always have one member of staff at least, you know, between two people, one FTE is at least, to keep driving it forward, then all the volunteers can offer their professional skills. And then the question is, where do you get the money for that one FTE? And so one of the good ways to do that is to apply for the Awards for All scheme from the lottery. So it was 10 grand for a year, and now it's 20 grand over 2 years you can apply for. And that is at least something. Obviously, I'm not sure about what, I mean, it depends how many days a week you're running it, right? But that could be, I mean, we pay people London living wage because I don't think it's right not to be doing that, but also most of our people are volunteers. But without that sort of backbone of somebody who's running that space, it's really, really hard. And I think it's very hard to get people to just step up and say, I'll do it, because you can't rely on them to change it.
I want to come back to Tom and maybe.
Just very quickly, this strengthens what we should be campaigning for week.
Yeah, agree. Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree.
So people have more time to do.
Yeah. Another question?
Just come back quickly on.
Oh, yeah.
Just to say quickly, we found groups that don't get a building after a year and a year and a half, energy dissipates. We need to change the landscape where these buildings should be offered to community groups, and we're trying to campaign for that system change. And also, you know, groups in more affluent areas, they have more time and money to volunteer, whereas other areas people are trying to pay the rent, keep the bread on the table for the end of the weekend, and things like that. And there's lots of different factors to these things. Whether you have an employed member of staff or whether you run volunteers, many of our movement spaces are coming from lots of volunteer people over lots of time, and it is good to have an employed person that's a debate between how much time and energy things you've got. I'm seeing a couple of the centres now, Swindon, remade, they're advertising for like 28 to 32k centre managers, and here's us doing it on a phone bill. Wow, great, 30k. But you know, all of these things, we need to work out how to resource our spaces, get the spaces quicker, and work out who has capacity and how we can help people who haven't got much capacity to help them all to get capacity to help community.
If anybody has questions, please use this break to kind of bombard these people.
But I think we're going to try and keep the break to about 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
So, in this second session, we're good? In this second session, we're going to look at focus on solutions as space of focus is supposed to be about. It strikes me that in our communities and so on, we're very good at diagnosing the issues, and we're good at campaigning and protesting and so on, but we need to focus on issues. And in the local is the global, right? So all these issues that we find in local situations are actually happening elsewhere. Solutions, therefore, logically, we can find elsewhere as well. Which is a nice segue to introduce my next guest, our next speaker. I didn't guess the man. Our next speaker, Alex Frediani from the International Institute of Environment and Development. Alex will talk to us. He has a short video to show us first, which looks again at the global issue of housing justice, and then he'll talk afterwards. So please give a warm welcome to Alex.
I will show first, just to quickly introduce myself. So yeah, great, thanks so much. I work in an institute that we work a lot on research, and it's very much in line with what I think Phoenix was saying, the type of research that can be used for campaigning, for groups that are trying to bring about change in the local areas. So we really try to support this process by thinking of research that can influence impact in terms of policy and advocacy work. And one of those initiatives, we brought together a few groups with whom I've been working in the past, new groups that I've met during this process, including Debo here from Housing Rebellion that participated in this exchange. We had a few online meetings, and everybody that joined then kind of accepted the challenge to do a little video about what is housing justice for them. And it was a wonderful exchange. We had like 4 different, we were supposed to have ended up having 4 different online meetings from people from all sorts of different places. And this is just a snapshot of the different videos that were produced. Next week we're going to be launching the kind of blog post with all the videos. So I hope we'll be able to share with you all the videos produced by all the different groups in different places. But I wanted to show to you now this kind of trailer of the other videos.
Okay. Yeah. Again, hopefully it'll be loud enough. Now we've got the speaker working, we can do some live emergency IT. We'll try it out.
My initial housing justice is everyone, no matter who you are, has the right to a home that is safe and is genuinely nice place to live.
Housing justice means the end of homelessness. Having a home should not impoverish you or make you ill.
ಮನುಷ್ಯರು ನೆಮ್ಮದಿಯಾಗಿ ಹಾಗೂ ಸ್ವಾಭಿಮಾನದಿಂದ ಬದುಕುವಲ್ಲಿ ಮನೆ ಎಂಬುದು ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಮುಖ ಅಂಶವಾಗಿದೆ.
Land should not be modified. Land should not be used for profit. It must be used for the protection of all.
To raise awareness about the bad policies that exist that make landlords make more money and people just get poorer and live in poorer housing.
Justiça habitacional é quando a gente consegue os nossos direitos, busca um novo empreendimento, busca uma regularização, busca uma reurbanização.
The right to access to land, the right to housing, the right to food, the right to live, and the right to health care. Those are some basic rights that we all deserve. Just really good.
Land rights are indeed a crucial aspect of housing justice for people living in vulnerable settlements in India. The only way to bring the housing justice in practice is to transform the vulnerable community residents into urban planners, community advocates, and experts in urban governance can indeed empower them to advocate for housing justice in India.
A comunidade acredita que é possível quando ela vê que tem pessoas junto com ela. Trazer amigos de fora para conhecer, para falar para a comunidade, para contar suas experiências, eu acho que esse tem sido um dos pontos mais importantes. Fazer com que o morador, que é considerado mais simples, tenha sua importância nessa luta, isso mobiliza os outros moradores.
Latin is a community that began as a fishing settlement over 100 years ago and have grown into a modern neighborhood in the heart of Lagos. Over the years, we've been threatened with evictions, but overcome each threat and continue to grow as a community. In 2021, the Lagos State Urban Renewal Agency announced plans to regenerate a part of Lagos, including Otumara. The community was initially left out of the process, but have now requested to revert and pass through of the planning.
We come from a very evil system in South Africa, which is called the apartheid system. We displaced the people out of the city, where people live better. We organize people in numbers. We believe that the organizing of the people from below, from grassroots, is very important. And of course, we call it the people's power. And the other form that we use is, of course, naming and shaming those who want to evict poor people and displace them from the land that they occupy.
ಸತಿ ಹಾಗೂ ಭೂಮಿ ಸಂವಿಧಾನದಡಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸಂವಿಧಾನದ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ರಾಜ್ಯಗಳಿಗೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಿಸಿದ ವಿಷಯ ಎಂಬ ಕಾರಣಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ವಸತಿ ಹಕ್ಕನ್ನು ಖಾತ್ರಿಗೊಳಿಸಲು ರಾಜ್ಯ ಸರ್ಕಾರವನ್ನು ಒತ್ತಾಯಿಸಬೇಕು. ರಾಜ್ಯದ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಾಗರಿಕರು ಸೂಕ್ತ ಅಗತ್ಯದಷ್ಟು ಮಾದಕ ಘಟಕವನ್ನು ಪಡೆಯುವ ಹಕ್ಕನ್ನು ಸರ್ಕಾರವು ಪರಿಗಣಿಸಿದೆ.
ಜಾತಿ ಧರ್ಮ ಲಿಂಗ ಭಾಷೆ ವರ್ಗ ಮುಂತಾದ ಯಾವ ಆಧಾರದಲ್ಲೂ.
I'm also a big believer in internationalism, which means we have to work collectively, globally, to make change. So I'll start with New York City. We suffer from high rents, lack of affordable housing to meet people's needs. We have high rates of homelessness, and our governments haven't come up with solutions. So I think we need to bring more people with lived experience into the fold to make these changes.
Giustizia abitativa è per noi un complesso di diritti che coinvolge molteplici sfere della vita sociale urbana. Il diritto ad una casa salubre e confortevole e non precaria. Il diritto ad un quartiere accogliente dove poter dare spazio alle proprie passioni e relazioni senza il rischio di esserne allontanati per cause economiche o altre discriminazioni. Il diritto a fare parte di una collettività in cui avere una voce e di cui condividere le responsabilità verso se stessi e gli altri, verso i beni comuni e l'ambiente.
These are all the community groups that participated, activist groups, sometimes university-based, sometimes more focused on NGOs that are working together with social movements. These are more social movements in São Paulo. So it was a very diverse set of views and very powerful experience. I hope you enjoyed the movie. And I think that if I just go now to some of the points that I wanted to make, well, through the different conversations, I've been working also in many different spaces with networks of civil society groups, often working across boundaries, thinking about exchanging experiences, trying to see how we can support each other. So we can go all the way to, I think we just go here. Going on, we've been doing different types of events like the one I just described to you. And I want to summarize to you 4 different areas where I think talks quite closely to the ideas of this workshop around spaces for hope. 4 different areas where I see there is a lot of emphasis from those grassroots groups trying to be mobilizing in trying to bring about change in the housing sector. I will start with the first one. So if we go to the next slide around anti-discriminatory housing policy in practice, there is a lot of demands for engaging with housing policy that deals with the systemic historical legacies of discrimination that have been perpetuated through housing systems, and how to do that, concrete ways through which policy responses can do that. And we've been trying to document different initiatives from local government sometimes more grassroots oriented, to try to document and to call for anti-discriminatory housing initiatives. This is a set of practices from Lagos, from community groups that have been documenting, making their own videos, setting up their own youth groups, demonstrating what type of experiences of evictions, the violations of housing rights they are suffering, and using that to create public awareness, but also to submit those videos in court to try to find the judicial systems to try to protect them against violations. I mean, there has been series of losses of life and damages. They're going through extremely violent processes and totally unconstitutional and illegal forms of eviction in Lagos. And we see a series of practices around that's really powerful, and also a new way of involving young people into the movement of housing rights in Lagos, using digital technologies, thinking about video making, storytelling, putting people's at the first experiences, and trying to change mindsets of different people in the society in a context where many of the people living in the waterfront in Lagos are often perceived to be not legitimate to be living in Lagos due to their origins, due to the ethnic group, and also due to class struggles in the city. So it's really extremely empowering set of initiatives there. Next slide, if we're thinking about radically democratic forms of housing production, we see ongoing efforts internationally to try to promote not only non-speculative forms of housing production, that can lock housing into affordability in the long term, but also that this is radically democratic in the way within which decisions are made. We can talk in the UK context if housing associations are producing non-speculative or not. I mean, that's as a question, I think. Maybe we're going to hear more about it. Definitely not democratic. And we can also see how council housing could be an alternative to try to promote more affordable, more long-term affordability issues around democracy, democratic processes of non-speculative housing solutions. There's a certain slogan that also international movements have often tried to use around community-led housing, and that also is it involves a range of different initiatives there in the international context, from self-help, community-led trusts, to, in the case of Brazil, we call it mutirões, self-management, or in other contexts we have different names associated to how collective forms of housing production has existed, and also try to call for more supportive mechanisms through which those collective forms of housing production can be promoting more democratic, more non-speculative, taking housing away from speculative market systems, which kind of reinforces issues of gentrification, etc. So really interesting, I think, efforts here, and lots of international advocacy around that. There's the International Social Housing Festival in Barcelona that has been happening well, it happened last year, but they happen in different places, which it's trying to actually promote a lot of discussions around that internationally, and what type of work needs to be done there to support that. The third area of work is around understanding housing more as an infrastructure for more sustainable and fairer cities. And we see more and more grassroots groups making the case, and I think we'll talk a lot about data, that housing in well-located areas that are truly affordable, that can actually deal with housing deprivations, is not only good for those that are living there, but is good for the whole society. I've done some background research trying to come up with data of if you're improving housing in slums, in informal settlements in a particular country, what's the return that will bring to the country? And we could see that, for example, up to 10.5 GDP of a country could be expanded if you do improve people's housing conditions. 1 out of 6 of the kids out of school can be back at school. If you improve housing, you bring kids back at school. So trying to use data like that to, in terms of that, there is more lives can be saved globally by improving housing in informal settlements than finding the cure for malaria, for example. We started looking at data, like horrific data about child mortality rates due to the housing conditions in informal settlements. We know that stories in London, we are hearing how that is leading into losses of life due to the precarity of housing. And there are studies that document in particular areas showing how many deaths can be attributed due to poor housing conditions. And we can start quantifying that and using that data for advocacy work. This is a very interesting example that I cannot open it up because otherwise I'm going to talk too much about it, but it was one of the 350 buildings occupied in the inner city areas of São Paulo by organized social movement, and they were able, through collective organization, through social movement, to get support from local and national governments to rehabilitate the building that they occupied, and now to be collectively managing the building. And the ownership of the building stays with the government, but they give a lease for the community group to actually manage and to live in the inner city area. This is extremely incredible precedent that can be actually talking about reuse, talking about the issues around why we should retrofit, but retrofit, socially oriented retrofitting. There's a lot of debate in Brazil about retrofit as well as it is in many other places, how it's been hacked by corporate interests. But how can you actually bring that idea of retrofitting in terms of refurbishment, repair, through the language of care and inclusion that can have also sustainability outcomes. We have very little data still today around the kind of carbon benefits in terms of what does it mean if we are to, what are we seeing in terms of emissions. If we were to rehabilitate a building like this, if people were to be relocated in the outskirts of cities and start making those calculations in terms of the carbon emissions and what is actually most, I think that's the kind of study that would be also very interesting, very difficult to make. I think there are efforts to try to make that type of calculations in different contexts. I mean, maybe we hear from Grace as well, like maybe how the types of data in the UK, because I know the issue around refurbishment rather than demolition is very important for housing rebellion as well. So yeah, the idea of positioning housing as an infrastructure for care, as an infrastructure for sustainability and for fairness, I think it's an interesting narrative. It's not only a narrative, it's actually fundamental if we're thinking about more inclusive cities and more inclusive societies as a whole. So I think that's a growing, narrative for advocacy and for negotiation of different stakeholders. Thirdly, I think it's the idea that when we're thinking about housing policy or housing responses, there is a call to expand the imagination of what that means. So often communities go to and demand with different actors about housing responses, and the imaginary of what those housing responses are so narrow, like high-rise buildings that people can live in particular, or home ownership, while in reality we know that the type of responses are so diverse and they can range so many different ways and possibilities. And I think the call from many of those grassroots groups have been, let's expand the conversation. Let's expand the possibilities of the different types of models. We talked about the models of responses that we can actually respond to different needs and capacities on the ground. One way within which this has been advanced, for example, in the context of Sierra Leone in Freetown, which is an initiative that I've been involved quite closely, but it's not unique by any means. It happens I know similar initiatives happening in Nairobi, in Rio de Janeiro, as well as in other contexts around the idea that we could be developing community-led or locally based informal settlement upgrading initiatives, where communities then start designing solutions and ideas about how they can transform their settlements, and where architects and planners change their mindsets from the providers and the solution makers to enablers, to utilize their skills as a way to allow people to express their visions for the future and the neighborhoods that they would like to live in. And in this process, unlocking so many possibilities of action that can happen today, tomorrow, not only waiting for things to happen elsewhere. This type of bottom-up, community-led planning processes is not a new idea by any means, but definitely something that communities continue utilizing to negotiate the relationship with different stakeholders and to expand the imagination of what could be the transformations in their own communities. Yeah, I will finish here with those 4 different propositions, and thank you for the invitation.
Yes, oh, sorry. sorry. Thank you so much, Alex. Really appreciate that. Thank you. Really. So many solutions, there are many alternatives, literally many alternatives we can learn from all around the world. And these are just some Alex has so briefly sketched out for us. And of course, Alex will be available to speak to afterwards, all the chance that we need to sort of get out of here quite prompt.
Well, as long as we get the chairs sorted,
yeah,
then we can play it by ear.
Okay, cool.
But you're helping me like everything else upstairs later.
Yes, of course. From what Alex has just told us, and what would that look like here in the UK? Housing Rebellion has been sort of making a splash, really huge campaign going on with Lesness. We have people from Lesness here and so on. Huge campaign going on showing how we can do it. We're sick of making demands to authority and government because what they give us at the end is just crumbs, it's rubbish, it's too little, too late, it's not enough. So what do you do in that case? Don't make demands. Forget about demands. Occupy, right? Logical. May I introduce Grace Laddie from Housing Rebellion. Thank you.
Nick, when you introduced me and when you asked me to speak and I saw the title of this and I thought, you're going to want me to talk about what a wonderful space of hope Lesness is. But I'm not going to do that. I'm really sorry. I'm going to lay it down because I want to talk about all the reasons why we really got to be scared there's no hope, right? I want to start with that. We are in really big trouble, okay? All of the predictions about climate change, everything they said was going to happen is happening quicker. Everything that, the worst case scenarios are not even what's happening. It's worse than the worst case scenarios. We have the worse than seeing genocide on your TV is not seeing genocide on your TV because it's not top news anymore because it's been going on for 9 months and it's normal. And we have this week seen European governments give weapons to Ukraine to use long range into Russia. The genuine threat of nuclear war between West and Russia is real, right? This is the world we're living in right now. This is not a hopeful world. And right now, some of the people I'm working with in Hastings, which is where I do most of my campaigning at the moment where I live, I'm in a car with a woman who I'm part of a tenants campaign. They're part of a Southern Housing Association dealing with damp and mold and rubbish conditions, and she's talking to me about how her mom, who has COPD, has been sleeping on a couch for 4 years because the bedroom is moldy and can't be used, and she's also on a waiting list for a knee operation. She can't move properly, she can't, because that waiting list is so long. We have a collapse of the basic infrastructure of health, of housing, of that. So it's a daily bloody misery that has become normal, right? So I'm really sorry. The reason I'm starting with that is because I want to really tell you that the only hope is to get rid of the system that creates all of that. Right? Capitalism. There is no space of hope around capitalism, behind it, somewhere else, inside it, hide stuff. There isn't, okay? Because whatever we create, little spaces, and they're beautiful. I mean, I set up a residents association, okay, on the estate just around the back of here, Loughborough Estate. And I lived here 10 years ago. We created a residence, and it's beautiful. Communities coming together. We can do wonderful things. We bring our children to the seaside. We can do lots of things. But everything is so temporary. Everything is can be taken away. All the things we're fighting for now, when they're taking away our council estates and our housing, they're things we won already, okay? These are things we thought we had in the bag. We had it. We had social housing in this country. People could go and move out of home when they got to an age and move into a council flat. So we're fighting backwards. We're fighting to defend stuff we thought we'd already got, right? So nothing is sacred under capitalism. Everything is still always going to be taken, and we are in endgame now. So anything that we do that is not connected to overthrowing capitalism, I'm sorry, it's nice, but it's not going to cut it, right? So what we're doing in Housing Rebellion, in Lesness Estate, is we're not creating a commune, we're not creating a space outside capitalism, we are fighting the system. We are fighting, we found people who want to fight, because that's your first thing you've got to do. Don't worry about who they are, but if they want to fight, find them and link with them and help them fight. So we've got people in residence who want to fight. There's been lots of estates in that area that were knocked down and people didn't fight. These people we found want to fight. They come to us and they said, what should we do? And we said, we have played a role which is important, and it's that coming together of helping them to come up with ideas, giving them confidence, raising their confidence to do this for themselves. Because I believe that's where the hope is, the hope that we collectively, us, the decent people of the world, we have interest in overthrowing this system. We could have the power if we believe that we could run it for ourselves, if we all really believe that we could take them on. So every struggle that raises people's confidence in their ability to fight is a step towards revolution. It's connected to a strategy for revolution. It's not about we need to overthrow the system, that would be nice, but let's just tinker away on things we think we can change. If everything you do is connected to a vision that you're raising the confidence of people to fight for themselves, hopefully, there's going to be a struggle that we will win. I think that's where the hope is. That's the only hope that we have. And so, tomorrow I'm meeting up with tenants in Lambeth. If there's anybody here who's part of that group, I'd love to meet you. Is that you? So I understand you guys are being evicted. What do? We say you've been evicted. You're not just going to be a victim. You want to fight, right? You want to fight back. So we can rally around you, and we can build a movement based on, you live right there right now. They have to get power because you have that control of that space, and we can help you keep control of that space. And that battle over space is so it's not something you win or lose forever. It's the process of how we fight and the things people learn in the process of doing that. We're going to lessons tomorrow. Me and Deborah, we're going to be. There's lots of contradictions within the struggle, right? It's not just straight up. There's lots of, some of the people who stepped up to fight, who are guardians in Lesnar's estate, suddenly found that they got a real massive backlash from the guardian companies who really clamped down on them. So they got that exhilaration of joining the fight last year when we did the first occupation, and were really up front. And then a lot of them have kind of stepped back because they're scared, because they realise the backlash from Peabody and the guardian companies against them. So we've got this first step forward, step back. So that's where we learn as we go, we develop tactics, and we bring people with us. And there's a famous phrase from a revolutionary called Rosa Luxemburg said people only become aware of their chains when they move. And that even that politicization of suddenly moving and realizing there's this bloody company holding you back, holding you hostage because they can make you homeless and take your studio if you fight back. But I think every time people go into struggle, that gives hope, because anyone you speak to who ever fall, even if they lose, that's usually one of the proudest things they've ever done in their lives. It's that moment when you feel like, I'm not just a stooge of the system, I stood up, I was a human being, I had self-respect, I didn't just put up with it. So even when you lose, we win something, so it's never about the spaces that we keep or these putting it in the bank. We've got this thing. It's the movement we build, the lessons we learn, the networks we build, the confidence we create, the solidarity, the camaraderie that comes out of saying, that's what gives people a sense that something better is possible, because it's really hard looking around the world today to think, God, humanity is so beautiful. But when we fight together, when we do things together, you get a restore a belief in what humans, we are possible of being better than we are. But right now, we're all a bit shit, we're all part of a forgotten system, but when we struggle, when we fight, we become better than who we are. And we there's hope, right, for something better. So that's my pitch. People who want to fight and to try and push that forward. And housing is a brilliant place to bring lots of different struggles together, because it is about control of space, and it's so central to how we all need somewhere to live. And it also brings all the contradictions of the system together. Housing, do you just mean like that, around the environment, around the elites, the majority who don't own it, people who do own it. You've got all the contradictions of the system right there in housing, right? So and it's somewhere where we have the capacity to link to the vast majority of people. So it's not like a niche issue. It's like something that people are living with day to day. It's a kind of housing struggles. They tend to have, you have that. You have that capacity to reach into the community. So housing rebellion is a grassroots community organising movement. Yeah, it's not a place or a space. It's an idea that we can reclaim housing. We can fight for housing. We can come together as a community to fight for. I'm sort of rambling a bit now. I'm not sure what else to say. Direct action.
Yeah. It was interesting because you were talking about, one of the examples you gave was the one that you said that you wouldn't expand on, was that there was some housing in Sao Paulo, and I was thinking, well, is it easier to squat in Brazil, or what's been happening with and things like that? But then there was a slide when you talked about I think it was Freetown, and there was a brochure front cover, and there was a UCL logo, and so my question to you is, how can the insights and the international perspective and the data and the understanding help Grace do what she's doing? How can the universities, who have all of this thinking, become revolutionaries themselves? What work can you do to back up?
I think they need to politically align themselves with an agenda, and that's not an easy thing when you go even inside the institutions, and then try to make that case. And I think it's a challenge in itself. I think that's one. You cannot be on the fence.
Yeah.
I think you need to really go and embrace the political agendas and the political status that the institution is there for. And I'm afraid of the being conceived as a bias or not biased. You know, as you say, there's no time. There's no this is not about being biased or not biased. You know, it's about survival strategies. So I think that's one. Secondly, I think there's a lot of possibilities around research that can be defined through those agendas. So not the other way around. Not that you have very often the research proposals and the agendas of research comes from the high-level settings of university or research institutes rather than the demands and the possibilities. So what we just heard today from Phoenix, for example, that was my area, I would go to see how can we do a research together so that we can do data collaboratively, so that it's not the researchers only in the university, that we also think about different ways of producing knowledge, but that you can then feed that into concrete initiatives. And I think that some of the data that I was giving around returns of improving informal settlements came from that type of relationships, where civil society groups, grassroots communities, and social movements saying, can we get some data around, because we need that in terms of advocacy. So in terms of housing rebellion, for example, when we're thinking about some of that returns in terms of carbon emissions, there are ways to calculate that. And I think thirdly is the connection with a multilateral system. This is a global problem, it's not a local issue. And we're not going to resolving some of those issues here if we don't engage into solidarity movements internationally and to engage with agencies that can affect global processes. And we need to bring multilateral systems back to the conversation. They are being part of the other game. And I think there are spaces there that I think is important to inhabit for movements like the Housing Rebellion to speak out in those platforms as well, and to be able to be in solidarity with other groups that are going through similar processes, learn from them, share experiences with them, and position themselves in solidarity in relation to some of those global actors that at the moment is reinforcing the problem.
Because I'll set myself as has to be slightly provocative this evening, I'm just going to say that there is also an important need not to get sucked into the world of policy, right? Because it's so easy, and it's the way that the system co-opts us, is that you get sucked into, there's a whole movement around parliamentary committees on council housing, right? And there's some good people involved in it, don't get me wrong. But they sit in rooms in committees in Westminster and they bring people in to talk to MPs who don't have any control or interest in controlling the housing market in this country, don't own the land, you know what I mean, who don't want to regulate it, and you suck all the energy and focus into their spaces, their agenda, their policies, we know what needs to be done. It's obvious what needs to be done. You've got empty houses and people who need homes. We don't need bloody policy think tank, right? What we need is to say to people, if you see an empty home, you don't know how to get into it, we'll help you. This is how we do it. This is how we do it. Do you know what I mean? So I'm really wary of activist campaigners and revolutionaries being sucked into I'm much more in favour of what we're doing in Resonance, which is we've invited architects to come and support what the residents are asking for. We want to know how to refurbish those buildings so we can use that as part of our campaign to hit a T-body. So you come in service of us, and you can take that back and discuss it in your policy meetings. But we shouldn't get sucked into that because it saps energy, time, and diverts people away from the fight.
One reflection, sorry, in the exchanges that we were having, so many people were like, oh wow, coming from Lagos, coming from Brazil, coming from Johannesburg, India, and then hearing stories from Milan, hearing stories from New York, hearing the stories from London, and saying, this is why we don't want that housing system here. This is why we cannot just go through the same process, because the perspective from other places is to say, well, if you're having this problem there, and the direction that things are going is very much in a similar way. And so we need to replace it. Unless there is that type of international solidarity around the different experiences that people are going through and the connections point, I think the issue remains very local. And I think it's that kind of global solidarity and possibilities the social function of land property that was in the Brazilian Constitution is fundamental to avoid evictions. Fundamental. If it was not that piece of regulation in the Constitution, people wouldn't be able to make the case, for example, that an occupation is bringing the building back to legality. An illegal act of occupying is actually bringing the building back to legality. This is a fundamental innovation in policy framework that allows them that in the court to resist evictions. So I agree with you. Having said that, there are bottlenecks that actually, and levers that would allow those grassroots groups to actually retain. And I think many of them are in life-threatening situations. And we need to acknowledge also that the the extent to which one can actually go into a conflictive situation is very different in different places.
Brilliant. Well, I've got about 10 minutes, so question there, and then one there.
Sorry, I'm just going to play devil's advocate for Grace. It's like we're facing an election coming up, and would you say all parliamentary politicians are the same then? Or do you feel that there are some that are very, you know, our experience here in Lambeth is that some are notably higher quality than others, and therefore, thank God they are engaging. Just so that they are creating a bloc that is not suffice, you know, behind them are activists and campaigners. But thankfully there are alternatives, albeit quiet and some a bit louder, but I'm throwing that out to you, Grace.
Yeah, no, fair question. I'll give you an example of the campaign I'm involved in Hastings, right, which is, like I say, about a damp and mould, right, we're working with tenants. And when we set up this WhatsApp group of the tenants off the back of a public meeting to start to campaign together to deal with mould and damp, a load of the local councillors joined the group, right, which is fine, they could join. There's an election coming up, just recently, for councillors, and even since then. And they constantly were saying to people, just come to me, I will help you, I will help you. They were coming falling over themselves to say, I'll take up your case, I'll take up your case, right? Which is the model of how politicians do things, right? They act on your behalf. And when, part of the campaign, the CEO of Southern Housing offered me a meeting, right? Me personally, a meeting, because of a protest we'd organised. And I refused the meeting. And I did it publicly, and I said, I am not going to a meeting unless that meeting is open to all the tenants. Because I am not interested in you talking to me. They deserve respect, and you should come to a meeting for all the tenants. CEO refused, so the meeting never happened. I don't care. The councillors were offered a meeting with a lower level executive in the council. They went to the meeting, reported back in the WhatsApp chat that they'd been to this meeting and the residents were incensed, right? And that was beautiful to watch this process happening. The residents went, who are you to go to a meeting on our behalf? And why did you not tell us it was happening? We should have gone, right? And they kicked them out of the WhatsApp chat. So, to me, that is a beautiful process of politicization, of people discovering their own strength, their own power, their own control over that campaign. And the councillors, the politicians must be in service of us, right? They are not there to take over, to speak for us, to talk for us. And so I love that Pete is standing in Lambeth. Honestly, the reason I'm saying Pete is important because Pete walks the walk, right? He goes out and he fights with the community. He stands up. He broke into Prentonville prison with me a few months ago. You know, so that kind of politician I really respect, and I hope. But the thing is, the main thing is that even him, right, he must always remember that his job is to be a platform to build the movement and build the confidence of other people, not to beat himself up. That's where we have to change the relationship.
Can I just have one tiny point, is that politicians have a huge budget at their disposal and can make decisions and motions and policies. So them being allowed to run riot, so I know what you mean, I'm not saying being a politician stops anything, but allowing the ones that are in power in Lambeth, obviously seeing the brunt of it, facing demolition, they walk all over you, they walk all over the tenants, and so therefore I'm just saying, even just as a paper over the cracks, some sort of barrier. Like you say, Pete is a great example of someone who is definitely out there for the community, but not to depend on them. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. I support you, Grace.
System change. conscious of time, so I'm just going to move it on because I want to get a couple more questions. We've got a question here, then Phoenix at the back, and then a question at the back, and then that might be it. But if you keep your questions and your answers quite swift, no, it's all right. No, we might get more of it.
Yeah, try to be very quick. Because they really link together well, two things. On one side, happy housing is happy people. You're the happy housing is happy people. What you are creating actually is the people uniting together and doing things, standing together. As you said, they'll feel better because they're doing something positive and breaking danger at the end of it. Even if you fail, it doesn't matter. You still feel good because you knew you did squatting for whatever amount of time, and empty houses, homes, people go together. All those things. But therefore, to actually change the system, we need to be able to go into those houses and fix them. They need fixing. There's plenty of people out here who are all really qualified. And I was actually talking to Celine during the break, and she gave me, which I really love, guerrilla repairs. Guerrilla gardening used to be really good. You would go out in the middle of the night, get a load of teenagers who nobody bothered with, and they'd be really excited to go out and plant things in the middle of the night. Why don't we do, or we could do, and offer as a solution, guerrilla repairs? Have people go and fix all the houses. Lots of the houses, I was again talking to a bit about it, lots of the houses are not badly damaged. All the refurbishments and all the stuff that he's doing, it's what we used to do. I did it as a way of life. We'd just go into a squat, live there for 3 months, fix it, make it enough, fix all the windows, fix the electrics, and move on, get another squat. It's wonderful, it's really satisfying. And we could be doing that as transition town. That's why when I first started blowing transition town, I thought these were amazing people because we were working out what we can do. And this is what we can do. If we can fix the houses, if we say to the politicians, look, you're not fixing them, we can fix them, that'll be a solution.
I'm going to answer both of you and just say yes. Right, but no, feel free to.
It's just a quick one. The group that occupied in Brazil and got a legal deal, was that Movimento Sem Terra or another one?
No, that was the União dos Movimentos de Moradia, which is an urban social movement that evolved very much in convergence with the landless movement, the Sem Terra. And yeah, there are many similar points of departure and many connections between the rural and urban social movements in Brazil.
Just a quick one back to the whole group really there is an activist for many, many years, land occupations, land desires, eco-villages, squatting. A lot of people don't think the election's going to change too much, but how do we collectively, let's organise a bigger meeting of housing rebellion, housing activists, landless activists, try and invite some international groups. Been in conversation with Nick Hayes, who wrote the Trespass book and the Right to Roam movement. They feel they're not being radical enough. They want to organise some bigger land occupations and urban land. And we should do them coordinated at the same time in the cities and on bits of land. So if there's any way more of us can talk about that, let's try and make something bigger happen.
That's really interesting, and that chimes with people that are saying, like, kind of people that are interested in nature restoration and things like that, are also then intersecting with the Right to Roam movement and stuff. So all of a sudden you go from like a council estate to a chaffinch in a wood, and it's the same thing. So that's really interesting.
Learning from Movimento Sem Terra, they're going with hundreds and hundreds of people in trucks and kitchens, and they occupy bits of land and they get on with it, and then they defend. And well, let's come to them on their estate. Danny's been telling me a lot of money anymore. Let's go and support that occupation.
Yeah, so people should come to Lisbon, and like I say, I mean, the thing we were talking about before the meeting started about Brazil and about Porto Alegre is that even with the most inspiring and powerful ground movements, it can all be moved back again. And so this is not a rejection of politics. When I was saying about how we treat politicians in elections, it's a different kind of politics, but we do have to have a strategy to shift the whole political system. It isn't going to be enough to take it one bit at a time. Do you know what I mean? So the political, it's not a rejection of politics to say that the power does not rest with the politicians. It rests with, do you know what I mean, capital, people who own, control, wealth, power, and we need to be in a position at some point to offer a complete political alternative that is grassroots, democratic, people-run society, right? So we have there's a big aim here, and I don't think, so it's not a rejection of politics, it's just looking at how paltry and pathetic the politics we're offered is, do you know what I mean? It doesn't even touch the sides of any of the issues we want to deal with. So, you know, our movement's got to be broad and political and global in outlook, but built on the ground, built on the grassroots, built on getting ordinary people fighting where they are, and not specialists. I mean, everybody can fight. So that's...
Hey, I guess I've got a question for all four speakers, and thanks for the whole evening in terms of inspiration. And the question is, in your radical imagination, what does imperfect success look like over the next few years? What is not perfect success?
No, it's all or nothing.
What is?
It's all or nothing.
I guess that's not my question. I guess that's not my question. The absolutes of being a speaker. But what does imperfect success look like over the next 1, 2, 3, 5 years?
I'll throw a quick one back at you. We'd love to see more community assemblies, people's assemblies happen. Occupy movement, 900 cities have people's assemblies going on. Imperfect success in 5 years' time, we could have a few thousand cities with community assemblies, people's assemblies going on, sharing their information digitally and replacing some of the present system that we can see with direct democracy, participatory democracy, sharing information and action. But it still wouldn't be fully what's
step rather than radical revolution.
Little steps. I'd love to see us transforming the way the British public connects with the words climate and sustainability, like just moving things along so we can get past those words and those barriers. Like if we can, I'd love to see it in 5 years' time, like 50. Like I'd just love to see lots of different models of community hubs and projects which are more sustainable and more inclusive. Yeah. And that is what I think is going to transform the British's psyche around what we need to do. Because I'd love things to change completely, but I just don't see what the steps are. For me, the steps, from my point of view, and everyone's different, is like we have to change culture. And to change culture, I think we have to make it normal for everyone to come together and engage and accept people where they're at and bring them on a journey, wherever they are. But I know that that doesn't chime with everyone, and it doesn't meet everyone's needs.
You see?
The thing is that I know it's really hard to imagine that we could take over society and run it for ourselves. That's why we need the struggles now, where people get that feeling that you get when you take over a space that's not that yours, that you're not allowed to be in, and you get that, suddenly, you get that drug, isn't it, that boost, that, oh, maybe something more is possible here, maybe I'm capable of more than I thought I was. So those are the steps. Those are the steps. But if we do not see them as steps towards this process of taking over everything, then it is an all or nothing game, right? It is not like there's a, what's that for this, all is chaos, the center cannot hold. There is no middle answer. There is no, let's just paddle where we are here. This is kind of all right, it's not too bad. This is either going to get better in a big way, or it's going to get worse in a really fucking awful way, right? And the right, the fascist right, they're waiting, they're not waiting, you know, they want to organize too, in the same places we want to organize. So I just think we've got to be real with people. If you don't, it's not palatable to say the only solution is revolution. It's not because I want it. I would rather spend my time on my allotment, right? It's because there isn't any other, this is it. That's the choices.
When the revolution happens and it's completed, will the result be perfect? No, well, that's your answer. Alexander, and then one last question.
That was the best answer. That once it's still be imperfect. So. But I do feel that there are also tipping points in systemic change, right? And you build those tipping points through recognizing that there are examples, there are spaces of hope, that there are things that are going on. That drug that you talk about, it is ongoing in many people's lives. And I think we just don't shed light on those. We are not putting those into the visibility. We make it kind of plain homogeneous state. When we talk about regeneration, we talk about as if there's nothing there. But there are so many things going on. And when we talk about research, what research can do, we can shed light on those many different systems that do exist. Systems of solidarity, systems of care, of ways of using resources in a non-monetary way, and how can that become useful for supported networks. And I think shedding light on those and then having more imperfect solutions that coexist with systemic operation is part of incremental, but at the same time understanding that structural radical change is needed to go towards a tipping point where the system can then start going towards different direction. But yeah, but I guess those are different theories of change, but also coexisting.
One last.
The sad news is not going to be a question, it's just a very short little sentence.
Yeah.
Before this, so there's some kind of an upcoming thing that's getting around now, and it's all of the stuff that we've been campaigning for and we are campaigning for is encoded into it. And it's a post-apocalyptic utopian future where communities are thriving, and it's called solar punk. So look it up online and start making friends with it, because if anything that doesn't fit into solar punk, then we're screwed. Pretty much, it's up to you, it's open source, you can build your solar punk future, but make solar punk.
Sorry, what was that?
Solar punk.
I think
positive future.
Yeah, the only utopian vision that's been going around, and it's a theme, so it's only a theme, it's completely open source, alienated, but if you can create a community that would survive the way, not survive, thrive in a post-apocalyptic future, then you got it right.
Thank you. I'm going to call time on the kind of like the official part there. We do need possibly a bit of help, like folding chairs up so that
Before
something
we
can
do
move.
that, could we just make sure that people know about what's coming next?
Yeah, no, that's. I was going to come to that. Yeah. I just wanted to no, I've got the admin in first. So, I don't know about anybody else, but that's just like, but totally blown me away. We've sort of gathered here today to talk about space and sort of taking community space and housing, and the to and fro has gone in all manner of places. We've talked about participatory democracy, overthrowing capitalism, solar punk, future narratives, the power of imagination, how we need to better organise in Lambeth and in Brixton, but also how we need to kind of reach out and draw in help and inspiration and solidarity from far beyond that. We've travelled to Africa and Latin America. It's been unbelievable. I would also just like to say this is the second, there are many alternatives. We've now done 2 of these meetings on Friday nights where, looking at you, you've all got better places to be. And it's been absolutely packed in both times. So that's absolutely amazing. I can't think of, you kind of like, I mean, I'm going to jinx it, but like, that would be amazing. But the third one is on Friday the 27th of June, is that right?
No, that's
12th of July. Okay, so that's a really good one. It'll just be me at that one. Friday the 12th of July, and it's going to be on health and food. So that's good. All right, excellent. So it's going to be absolutely excellent. But back to you, Nick.
Well, number one, thank you all for coming. Really appreciate you for that. And Carla, speaking at the next one, Carla from Health Living Platform, and say a massive thank you to Carla for providing a lot of the food that we've been eating.
And can I thank you so much for giving your email addresses to Lambeth people. So what I'd like to propose is that as part of our organising, we ask you to sort of help us promote the next Spaces of Hope event. So if I do a bit of an email list and maybe we'll do a WhatsApp group and get more people along and like get behind it. We do have like a programme of events planned and possibly like some kind of people's assembly at the end. So we really need. But this is just in a few people's heads at the moment, so we really need to build our movement and get more people sort of behind that idea.
And thank you, Larissa, Grace, Alexander and Phoenix for being so generous.
Very quickly.
Questions later, but no more
but the guy who did one of the talks.
Yeah.
Phoenix.
You call him Justice, you call him Justice.
Whoever
Yeah.
can, some of us meet up to actually formulate a plan. Because really, we need to go for landlord council.
Yeah.
There's an election coming up, and it's an emergency time now. There's loads of ideas floating around here. I've certainly got those, and I'm sure a couple of other people have as well. Can we talk about this?
Well, that's, okay.
Yeah.
We're going to have
Have
those
another
conversations.
meeting.
Thank you all very much. Can I just leave you with one last thing, please? And it's a quote from Sandra, who tried the impossible and it's failed.
What?
So now it's time to try the impossible.
Yes.